A guide to Welsh fairies. Eich. The Eich are often described as Welsh elves, but in actuality, they're far more interesting than that. Though in modern days they're referred to as elves, in actual folklore they're more closely related to elemental spirits, the very spirits of nature itself. The Eich are a diverse subgroup of fairy that are the very embodiments of the natural landscape itself. The Eich can be very nice and can bestow gifts upon you, but they can also steal your babies and cause all sorts of mischief. Appearance-wise, the Eich are often described as pygmy, elf-like creatures, and sometimes they have animalistic qualities, such as pointy ears, wings, and other traits of animals, such as fangs. It is said in folklore that you'll often find the Eich dancing under oak trees on Friday. Follow for more fairy lore.
Did someone catch a fairy on video? This person claimed that I caught a fairy on their house security camera. Look at it. When you pause the image slightly, this is what you see. Could it have actually been a Tinkerbell flying in their security cam? Before I continue, Trump is still trying to ban TikTok. Just in case he bans TikTok, I found an app just like it. Link is in the bio if you want to join too. I'm gonna be on there. Some people claim the fairy in the video is actually a wasp, but I don't know. You guys think it was a fairy or wasp?
I think I caught something on film. What do you think this is? Okay, this is something I took 2 years ago on our property in Virginia, and I'm gonna play the full video.
Okay, come over here by me and I'll show you while I'm holding on to you. Come here, so you can see where your mommy is.
Okay, fine. It's a video of our little underground spring thingy. But wait. Okay, so I'm gonna play it again. I'm gonna stop at the point. That. Did you just see that? That. Okay. But wait, it gets more interesting. Okay, so I've zoomed up on this little figure, right? And let me just go forward. What is that? What is that? What is that?
Did you know that according to Welsh fairy lore, Welsh fairies live on an island that moves? If you're familiar with Welsh Celtic mythology, then you're probably familiar with Anorvan, which in the folkloric system was translated to become the realm of fairy. But Welsh folklore has another fairyland. The Green Meadows of Enchantment, or in Welsh, Gwerddonau Llion. The concept of the Gwerddonau Llion is not too dissimilar to the Irish Tir Nanog, an island in the Irish Sea that moves from place to place. The Tylwyth Teg lived on the Gwerddonau Llion and would move the island towards the mainland of Wales so that they may visit mortal marketplaces. Whilst at these mortal marketplaces, the Tylwyth Teg would bestow blessings or curses onto unsuspecting mortals. It's a lovely place. Not that I've been, of course.
Me and my friends came across a fairy village. Church. Community hall. Tinker, where are you? Kitchen. Clock tower. Another building of some sort. Reading nook maybe? Lookout perhaps? Stumped on this one, but the glass shell looks important. Not sure what these hanging sticks are for?
The fairies were said to steal the milk off steal the butter off the milk. So to stop them doing that, you got a fistful of butter and you stuck it on the back of the fairy door. And then they came and ate that and they were satisfied, and then your milk you could churn away for the rest of the year and you'd have good butter. But if you didn't do that, they stopped the milk churning and it just wouldn't churn into butter.
And you put it on the back of the dairy door?
On the back You did it, I think, in the early morning or late at night. There was a time when you had to do it. I can't really remember what time it was. It's too long ago. I was about 4 or 5 and I remember my uncle telling me the story.
And where was that, eh?
That was down in Adamstown, County Wexford.
You heard that story?
I heard that story.
Folklore in 60 seconds, Elfheim, the land of fairy. Now most of the references to a specific land of fairy are in reference to a queen that governs that place. Now she is mostly mentioned in the 16th century Scottish witch trials, although fairyland and Elfheim is part of Scottish and English folklore. Because she's also mentioned in Edmund Spenser's 16th century epic poem, The Fairy Queen. Now this is arguably where the word fairy actually comes from. It wasn't the creatures that inhabited fairy, but it was the land fairy itself. So in Edmund Spenser's poem, a fairy knight was supposed to be a knight of fairy, but it got read as a knight that is a fairy. Much like many other worlds in Celtic mythology and in the mythology of the British Isles, the inhabitants are capable of being good and bad. They are capricious, beautiful, talented, and equally described as good and bad.
So I've shown off this book in previous TikToks. It's basically an occult primer for the Welsh traditions. It has Welsh fairy lore, Welsh spells, Welsh charms, all sorts. And I just wanted to talk about this today. This is Can y Tylwyth Teg, the Song of the Fairies. And according to this book, this is a song that people used to hear when they caught wind of the invisible world. And I just wanted to read a little bit out to you because it's beautiful and I love it. I'll just read this first bit. O'r glaswecht glân a'r rhedyn man, gyfeichion, diddan, dewch. Ei ddarfer nawn, mae'r llwyr yn llawn, yn nos, yn gyflawn gewch. O'r chwarae sydd ar dwyn y dydd, i'r dolydd awn ar daith. Nynnu sydd lon, ni chaiff ger bron, farwolion, ran o'n gwaith. There's an English translation in Christopher Hughes's Book of Celtic Magic.
Folklore in 60 seconds. Munja Vega. Manx fairies, 1 to 2 feet tall. They wear green jackets and red hats. They ride on horseback, chasing after rainbow-coloured hounds. Like many similar creatures found in other folklore, they are very capricious and can be very mischievous and spiteful. Like the Sidhe in Irish folklore, they also live in tumuli and ancient burial mounds and hillsides. Aren't always nasty, but you still shouldn't linger where they are. An old custom is to leave a fire constantly burning in the house, even throughout the night, so that the fairy folk can enjoy it. Often Manx women wouldn't do chores and spin and wash on Saturdays, as it was deemed to be displeasing to the Munja Vega. You're going to be baking bread or making food or anything like that, much like Cornish piskies really, you'd leave a little bit left over for the Munja Vega. Almost got taken away to the other world then.
When most people think about fairies, they usually think of little Tinkerbell-style creatures. But the fairies of Celtic fairy lore are usually very different. Take Welsh fairy lore, for example. I'm Welsh. We have this one type of fairy called a gwychion. The gwychion are a subspecies of mountain fairy, and honestly, they're terrifying. The gwychion are usually depicted as hag-like fairies who stalk the pathways of the mountainous regions of Wales, such as Eryri. They would usually appear before travellers as they were wandering the mountains. Legend says that if you come into contact with a gwychion, you are certain to lose your way. It was advised that all travellers in the mountainous regions take knives with them, as taking a knife out of the pocket made the gwychion vanish. So basically, if you're walking in the mountains of Wales and you see a hag-like creature skipping alongside you, run.
In Gaelic, there's 70,000 fairy forts in Ireland, but a lot of them has no power. But this one has power. When you walk into this, you will feel it in your head. It's built on a leyland. The fairies travels on these roads as energy lines. So they do. They are called fairy roads. The old Irish didn't know much about any of these lines are called. They always called them fairy roads. There's a fairy tree in the middle. A lot of people comes here to give gifts and thank yous to the fairies. The fairies has appeared here on a lot of occasions as well. The fairy fort is a place where the fairies really live. This is where they live and congregate. I have seen the fairies here on a lot of occasions here, playing music, having a drink, and dancing. They look like the image of yourself. Whatever height you are, they will be that height. They are the very same image as us when they want to show themselves, and a lot of themselves, and to show themselves to people that was here and didn't show themselves to me. The people who don't believe is a great thing, because that makes that I'm doing something right. A great friend of mine who lives up the road, he came in this field and he was a skeptic, and he came out of this field a full believer. He had an experience. The continent of Ireland is the land of Ireland. That black soil that we're standing on here, that's what gives us lives, and that's where we came from, and that's where we're going back to. And the fairies is part of that great tradition of a culture of land. And they kept the land sacred. They were the real people and the real things that kept the land sacred in Ireland.
I, for one, believe that these elusive beings may actually exist, since I've actually had some encounters with things that we may consider to be fairies. My first possible interaction with a fairy came at the Campsville Locks in Campsville, Illinois in 2016, although I had no idea at the time that this may have been a moment with a fairy until later that year. While exploring the locks, this photograph taken by my ex showed something strange arcing toward me. It's not a reflection from a flash off a bug, since no flash was used. Here's an example of a flash off a bug. And this object would have to be moving faster than the shutter speed. At that time, we just chalked it up to a big, I don't know. Had no idea what it was. When we came to the idea that this may be a fairy was when we absolutely saw something fairy-like following the Ghost of the Goldenrod event later that November. When the event concluded on the Goldenrod showboat, there were just 3 of us left, myself, my ex, and her friend Tara. Now, we were just in the showroom of the old showboat, the 2 ladies sitting down and I was standing in the middle. The only light was my flashlight shining back up into the lobby area, and since they had boarded everything up for the winter, there were no other sources of light. Well, we were just talking when I suddenly saw this translucent yellow ball kind of float down between Tara and Shauna. Now, I mentioned it very quickly, but really didn't pay it much mind. Maybe it was just a trick of the light or something.
We were all looking out there toward the lobby. Now, the first time I saw any sort of ball of light, it whooshed down real quick right there.
But it was just a few minutes later when I suddenly saw this strange bar of light right next to Shauna on the floor.
So what I first saw after that was that little bar of light on the floor here. Now my flashlight was pointing out that way, straight out to the lobby. It was on the floor. But that little bar of light was angled this way, like right here.
So I walked around Shauna over to where it was at to try to figure out where the light was coming from, because like I said, the entire boat was boarded up. So I'm moving my hand to and fro around it to try to break the light, whatever beam of light may be coming down, to make this strange bar of light. It was slightly V-shaped.
And it was short, I don't know, about 3 inches long, slightly V-shaped. And then it wavered. I was like standing here pointing, trying to figure out, if I could break a beam of light. And it wavered and went away.